We can learn a lot by talking about truth principles. We can also learn a lot by studying the people who exemplify those truth principles, who embody them. Typically, when we think about these people, we think about their accomplishments and their achievements, what it is they've been able to do in the world, perhaps something they've built or how they've influenced people. It's more rare that we get a chance to find out more about their inner life, what it took to build the kind of character it takes to lead in a way that really makes a difference. Steve Bolen has been senior minister here at Unity Church of the Hills for 10 years, and he's made a remarkable difference. Along with his beautiful wife, Mary, they've served us with so much love, kindness, and compassion. And in addition, with a great intelligence and wisdom, we have been so blessed to have them in our midst and to serve us with such dedication. The legacy they're leaving us of unconditional love and forgiveness is one that will stay with us long after they make their journey back to their home in Georgia. Steve, what I wanted to do was allow our spiritual community, our spiritual family, to maybe get to know you in a way they don't typically when you're on the platform. For many of us, you are really so exemplary in your capacity to love. I know personally, I have consistently felt unconditionally loved by you for 10 years. And I find that truly a remarkable achievement. And the thing is, I'm not the only one. These capacities to love like this and to forgive, they don't come overnight and they don't come easily. We have to work for this. And I think it would be valuable to people who are viewing to hear from you about your own journey, about how you've transformed yourself and made yourself into someone that we admire and respect so much, and also emulate. I happen to know I'm not the only one who, when I'm in a pickle sometimes, I don't know what to do, or my ego's kicked up. I asked myself, what would Steve and Mary do? So that's what I'd like to explore with you.
Thank you, Kay.
The first question I have for you is, how is it that you came to know that unconditional love and forgiveness were so important? At what point in your life did this become something that you really wanted to cultivate?
It came to me, Kay, at a time that was very difficult for me. A second marriage was ending. I had been able to have my youngest son with me a good bit of the time, and he needed to go back to be with his mother because that marriage was ending and he needed a more stable environment. Didn't really have a lot of prosperity in my life. In fact, it was very difficult in that arena. And that is when I was guided in meditation to clearly study A Course in Miracles. And it's interesting because the mentor that I had to that date in Unity was a little antsy about A Course in Miracles. It was channeled material. But I did follow that guidance. It was very, very clear. And I began to study that work. And it told me, first of all, that I was loved unconditionally. And it helped me see that that was the way home. That was the way that would make the great difference for me and for my experience with my children and their mom, other people who had been difficult in my life, and I still had some connection with some of them, my father's ex-wife. And so I delved deeply into that work, and it spoke to me very clearly that was, again, the way home. Through forgiveness, what I might call unconditional forgiveness, and through unconditional love. And I began to work with that in the people around me and the work that I was doing. I had a small church in Chattanooga at the time, and began to see the effect of how powerful that idea was in people's lives. So that was really the true beginning for me. Sitting down with A Course and just bites at a time, asking the Holy Spirit to help me understand a passage or a concept or whatever. And I think it also helped that I was actively applying those ideas as a minister in a relatively small church. When I would counsel people or when I would speak on Sunday, And so I was looking for ways to explain it more simply and more clearly. I knew some people had struggled with it a little bit. But I just have to say that anything that's authentic around the Course, Marianne Williamson's A Return to Love, Alan Cohen's work, many, many others who wrote, Ken Wapnick, that I feel resonates with the true meaning and teaching of the Course, is helpful to a lot of other people that might get hung up on the language, the masculine references, whatever it might be in a Course. And I know a good bit of it is kind of left brain and involves the mind a fair amount. But for me, the clear language that I'm God's child and that we all are, and that I'm loved unconditionally and we all are, opened my heart in a way that nothing else had and gave me a real gift.
Did you already have a personal relationship with God before that?
I would say that I did, but not nearly at the level that I had experienced when I came into the Course. And Jesus for me was a wonderful guy and a great teacher and so forth. But when I read the Course as it was coming from him, which is my understanding, it had, that relationship took on a whole new meaning and a whole new level of compassion and understanding, both from what he had gone through and what he was trying to convey, and for me in the place that I was in.
So you mentioned recently that you think of God as God the Father. You use that terminology yourself, and that you're open to other people using different terminology, of course, but that fits for you. So how do you see God the Father in your own cosmology versus the Jesus of the Bible and the Jesus of A Course in Miracles?
Well, it's the energy of Father, the energy of strength, the energy of safety, the energy of nurturing. I know that I don't, of course, see God as some anthropomorphic being in the sky, and I see Jesus as an embodiment of the complete awareness of God. So it's, I have, as you know, great respect for all the great teachers, Krishna, the Buddha, and many others. Feel a strong connection with Yogananda and his understanding. But for me, that Father concept, it wasn't something that got in the way for me, and it was something that I enjoyed. And part of that may have been because of my relationship with my own father, who was really the one who introduced me to so many of the concepts that have made such a difference in my life. Not without his own challenges, and he certainly had those, but it was just language that was comfortable for me.
Mm-hmm. I think you mentioned also in one of the talks that you gave that your nanny was really important in your life.
She was, and her name was Marguerite Simpson. She's passed, but I loved her. My mother had to be away a great deal when I was young, and Marguerite would come and stay. She was usually with us during the day when we came home from school. And I knew that she had something very special, but it wasn't until years and years later when Mary and I went to visit her when she was retired in North Carolina, that when I got there, all she wanted to talk about was love, and God's love, and her love for God and her love for us. And so it was like a beautiful coming home that helped me to close that circle. I know I learned a lot about love from my mother and father, but Marguerite, I think, was a great, great teacher of love in my life.
So you have a loving mother and a loving father and a loving nanny, and then you have the inner life of God and Jesus. And within all of that, like most people, I'm sure you've had difficulties. So you take the principles, you take the love, and then you hit upon real experience where something happens. Maybe, I think one of the more difficult things to deal with in life is betrayal. Betrayal can be emotionally really complex, and for a lot of people it can take a while to work through, and in fact some people stay bitter and they don't work through it. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to that in any way.
Yes, I can, and part of that is maybe in retrospect, where I went back and did work with an individual that I felt had deeply betrayed me and my father and my family. It was the woman that was married to my dad after my mother passed, and she was an individual who was very bitter toward men in general, and eventually that resulted in their relatively short-lived marriage. But I had felt that she had betrayed the family through some of her actions and held a good bit of resentment, really quite a bit of resentment and a feeling of betrayal by her. So when I came to the understanding through A Course in Miracles that I did, I realized that if I was going to continue to hold on to those grievances and see her as truly betraying me, that that was not going to serve me or the people that I was trying to serve. It was going to hold me back. And it wasn't fair to her either, because she was just a player in the play, in the drama that got so dramatic. And so, and another piece of that is that Jesus talked about his own seeming betrayal by Judas and others, and how in A Course in Miracles he clarifies all that to say there is really no such thing as betrayal. There's the appearance, just like everything else that is of that ilk. But so I kind of took a little cue from Jesus on that and said, well, in the major way that he appeared to experience betrayal, mine is not that severe, but I don't want it to hold me back anyway. And so I began to apply that principle of forgiveness to that situation, to that individual, and I could feel the results right away. It really made a difference.
So it was some information that helped you make the change, but you also had to have a change of heart.
Yes.
And you managed to bring yourself into a new place in your heart about it.
Absolutely.
Did it take forgiving once, or did you have to do it more than once?
I like what a dear friend of mine says, how do you know if you have forgiveness work to do? She said, are you breathing? And so it was a process. It was a process because different things would come up that might trigger some of that upset or whatever. But that's one that comes to mind for me, Kay, and it really was one that didn't just happen over a one or two times attempt. It was something that I really worked with, but it's made a difference.
So it seems like to me you made some inner decision that unconditional love is more important than these other things, even though the ego would tell us that we should not let go, that we deserve to resent, and so on. It seems like something happened in your consciousness where you not only made a decision, but you really put yourself behind that decision and were able to change.
Yes, and I think a lot of that had to do with my children. I was, of course, separated from their mother. I wanted to be the best possible dad that I could be, particularly in the fact that I wasn't able to be with them all the time. I was with them every other weekend because we lived about 3 hours apart. And the people that I served in the church, I wanted them to have the best of me. And I wanted to be able to teach them from a place of authenticity and not just talk about an idea, but to really do my best to live it. And for that reason, I had lots of motivation. And also the fact that when I began to work with those ideas and really work with them, put myself behind them, as you said, my life got better. It just got better and better. And it wasn't too long before I met Mary.
So tell us about that meeting.
Well, we had both felt all this, as we talked about it later, all this serendipity to have to happen in order for us to meet. And we met as dear friends. And interestingly enough, the individual who introduced me formally to Mary, I'd seen her one time before, but we hadn't met. This was in California. I was living in Chattanooga and she in Atlanta, and we made this trip to California along with many others for this beautiful spiritual retreat. And as I bounded off the bus, because I was excited to see my good friend, a dear friend, Jim Palmer from my church in Chattanooga, who had benefited so deeply from his learning about forgiveness, and he and I were part of that experience together. He was right there to introduce me to Mary. And it was a truly spiritual experience for us over those next few days. We were simply friends. We kept ending up in the same workshops, and just formed kind of a friendship. But then she would go back to Atlanta and I'd go back to Chattanooga, and we figured that would probably be it. But Spirit had something different in mind. But it was a very joyful coming together because of, I think, the place that I was in, and the fact that maybe she was opening to an experience like that.
How long have you been together now?
We'll be married 30 years on June 28th, 2017.
For, I think, many of us here at Unity Church of the Hills, your relationship with Mary has been so amazing, such a role model for us. You don't see typically people that have been married for 30 years express the kind of tenderness and genuine love and care for each other that you have. And I'm wondering if you can share with us some of how you have that magic. What does it take to get there, and what do you do to maintain that kind of love and care and respect for each other?
Well, thank you for asking about that. Kay, I would say that we are equally yoked in terms of our commitment to Spirit, our commitment to the principles that we're talking about today, forgiveness and love. To come back to A Course in Miracles for a moment, we call it our big blue ticket because it encourages us to really live that truth that teaches that we're to love everybody equally. And it sounds very etheric, but that's really our goal when we're in our right minds. It's to love everyone in our lives as much as we love each other. And that's a big order because we love each other so dearly. Not in the same way would we love others, but with the same energy and the same willingness. And so I think one of the secrets of our success in our marriage has been to heed the lesson of A Course in Miracles that says, if one of you goes down the path of ego and anger or upset or whatever, that whoever's saner at the time remembers to ask the Holy Spirit for help. And so we've done that quite consistently, and we've had lots of opportunities to kind of get in a place where we're listening to our ego, challenges with children or grandchildren or people in the work that we've done for the last 30 years. But that has been a saving grace for us because we cherish what we have so much, and we cherish the work that we're really about so much, the work of loving others and being kind to others, that it's all worth it. It's worth it to brush that ego aside, whenever we can get back to a place of sanity and clarity. And so that's a big piece of it.
That kind of attitude is much easier, I think, to hold when life is going well. But under a great deal of stress, it becomes more challenging. And one of the things I think about is you have so much responsibility here at this church, not only in an administrative way, which you've done just masterfully, but there are so many other pieces. Basically, people call on you and need you in so many ways. I know you go to hospitals, you counsel, people depend on you, and they draw on that beautiful love that you and Mary give. How do you restore yourself? How do you not overdo or, I know Spirit has infinite energy and love to give, but in a human body, how do you keep yourself in balance?
Well, that's a really wonderful question, and the truth is there have been times when I haven't. I guess it was 5 years ago when Mary and I made a little trip to Colorado. I came down with a really bad case of shingles, and we know a lot about that disease, and that is that it seems to originate from stress. And we were going through a very stressful time at the time with a dear family member who was moving through a very difficult time. And so she was right there to minister to me, to nurse me back to health as best she could. But we had to find that, we found, of course, that to get back to spirit, to get back to as much clarity as we could find in that situation. There were other factors that were going on when that all happened. But we find that if we're desirous of not just spiraling out of control, which none of us really consciously want that, but we know when we're headed in that direction, that we have to stop. And so she would read to me from the Course or from other spiritual works. We would delve into some ideas that might help us, that involved affirmations, that kind of thing. We had to be very cautious to be tender with each other, because I was feeling so badly, and she was stressed, and I was obviously stressed.
Well, and it's painful too, as I understand.
Oh, it's extremely painful. Yeah, it really is.
And that's hard. It's harder to be patient.
Yeah,
or it can be when you're in pain.
It is. But we find that if we revisit our commitment to each other and revisit our commitment to love and to sanity, to use that word again, then it's imperative that we come back to that place of tenderness. Because as you know, from relationship situations, if you get to biting at each other, then the ego really gets in the driver's seat, and next thing you know, there's all this snipping going on, and it's not fun, and it's not really who we are.
No, it's not. So you use that word sanity, and it sounds like you bring a lot of love and sanity to your relationship, and a lot of consciousness and care. Talk a little bit about what sanity means to you. I think you're referring to the Course when you talk about that, but what makes for a sane mind?
I think what makes for a sane mind, Kay, is when we're willing to stop and read the signals. When we feel ourselves engaged in fear or in anger or in grievance or upset, whatever it might be, whether it's something that we're watching on television or something that we're experiencing with someone in a difficult setting, one-on-one, or whatever it might be, that sanity is just really the willingness to listen to the voice of spirit that says there's a better way. Choose the higher path. And that really circles me back a little bit to your question a little bit earlier about how I've maybe grown in forgiveness and love. And it is a lot of that has had to do with the work that I've done in church. When you serve as a minister, you have boards to deal with, and sometimes those board meetings can get a little interesting, particularly when finances may be a little tough for the church, or whatever might be going on. There might be changes that are afoot. And so the Spirit is always whispering to us in those situations, come back to center, come from a place of sanity and clarity and peace. And because the motivation is there, when you've got something so precious as a church or a relationship or a friendship, whatever it might be, the motivation is there to keep it as honest and as clear and as clean as possible. And I think for me, that voice of sanity is Spirit simply saying, there's a better way.
For you, is it important to do some kind of regular practice as a reminder? Do you have things that you do maybe in the morning or the evening, or?
Each morning, Mary and I study the lesson from A Course in Miracles. It's a very meaningful time for us. Sometimes if I get up earlier, I get to jump on it a little bit, and then she'll come in and we'll work on it together a little bit. And we're not 100% with that. We hit it probably 90% of the time. But it is something that I've learned that really the meditation opportunity, the opportunity to go deeper, is around us all the time. It's here in this time that we're spending together right now. It's here for us when we interact with, in my case, staff members, when we sit down and discuss a challenge or whatever. That really, if my heart is open, that's a meditative experience for me. On Sunday mornings when people are gathering and the prelude music is being sung and I'm allowing myself to really connect and feel that depth of connection with the people that are here, that is a meditation for me, and that's a deepening. So I think the important thing that I've learned, and Mary is yoked with me in this idea, is that if we're willing to keep our hearts open, that meditation can happen much of the day, if not most of the day. And that's really what I think has made a great difference for us.
I think one of the emotions that people find most challenging to deal with is guilt. And I know the Course talks a lot about guilt.
Yes.
But I'm wondering if maybe you could enlighten us some about how to overcome that.
Oh boy. Well, I think to really take to heart the teachings of all the great masters that say that guilt, even if it seems richly deserved for oneself or for someone else, is that path that takes us away from spirit. And it was, again, to circle back to that moment when I was really engaged initially with the Course in Miracles, there was a lot of guilt that I had to let go of. Guilt around being separate from my children, guilt around not doing so well financially up to that point, having had success and then having that slip away. A lot of guilt around a lot of different things, but I found that if I got so focused on the wholeness that I am and that others are, that guilt didn't really have a place to live. It's almost like it didn't have breath. And so I began to feel that slip away. And what came in place of it was a tremendous amount of joy and a tremendous amount of love and kindness for myself, and a kindness that I was able to extend to others.
So it seems like being able to know that you're unconditionally loved and feeling that for yourself and toward yourself was an important part of this.
It was huge. It was very huge. And that there were no exceptions to that no matter what I had done or not done, or someone else had done or not done, God loved me unconditionally, and that it was appropriate for me to allow that true self within me to love myself as much as I could.
Which reminds me, I recently came to you and I said, Steve, I have something I am not able to forgive. It's unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And the first words out of your mouth were, the ego is always looking for the exception. And it made me realize my ego was telling me this was different than anything else, but it wasn't. It was just another one in the many strings of reasons not to forgive. And when you said that, it made all the difference.
Yes, that there are no exceptions is the lesson. And it's a great lesson to learn for all of us, because we're attuned through our egos to find, oh, this is the exception. Oh, I finally found it. Or I finally found the person that must be not a child of God, whatever it might be. So I'm glad that was able to help you.
Another place where I think you've made a huge difference for our community is in the area of prayer. I actually feel like I really did not understand prayer until you taught me. And it's made a huge difference in my life, and I've in turn been able to share that with other people and really help them. So I'd like to thank you for that, but also ask you if maybe you could talk about your experience of prayer, what it means to you, and how to go about it.
Well, thank you for that opening. To me, prayer is really a recognition of God. It's a recognition of God in the person that we're praying with, or if it's just for ourselves, it's acknowledging, God, I know that you're here, and you are that allness, you are that love, you are that pure light. And so in a willingness to acknowledge that, it tends to open our hearts, and then our words, if there are needs for words in those moments when we're praying with someone else, or even praying out loud to ourselves or with ourselves, or praying in a group, that prayer is guided by that love. That prayer is guided by that light. And that prayer is an affirmation, a recognition that that presence is all around us. It's really who we are. It's almost like that beautiful universe is constantly with us. It's the essence of heaven on earth. And that prayer is really just stopping to recognize that. It's to honor that light and that presence is really the true condition. And so as we pray in that way, we reveal that to ourselves, and we tend to hold up a mirror to the person we might be praying with so that they can see that in themselves and be reminded of it and be encouraged by it. So for me, more than anything, prayer is a feeling. It's a feeling of unconditional love. It's a feeling of what truly is. And I hope that's helpful.
That's very helpful. In spiritual literature, one of the things that people talk about and that many people have experienced is what's called the dark night of the soul. And that's a time when it seems like no matter how hard you try, God doesn't seem available. You can't seem to reach those higher spheres. Do you have any thoughts about that? Have you ever experienced that? And what do you do if you find yourself in that kind of situation?
Well, that's a very thought-provoking question, and the fact is I've experienced not one dark night of the soul, but quite a few dark nights of the soul. And I know we tend to think about that phrase in conjunction with an extended period of time. It might be a few days, and for some it's much longer. But I have had those moments, and they've been moments when things just really seemed bleak. It seemed like no matter how much I affirmed or how much I was trying, that things weren't working out. What I eventually came around to understand was that that dark night experience was really an opportunity to become still and become surrendered to the power that was all around me, but I couldn't see it or know it was there, and to have the wisdom to reach out for help, to ask for support when I was in that place. And sometimes that ask was an ask of spirit, just in the ethers as we kind of think about spirit out here, but also a willingness to ask for prayer from another and for support from another. And so that was a lifeline. It often came in the form for me of mastermind groups that I was a part of, or support circles that Arnold Patton had encouraged folks to do. It's the same idea. It's to come into an experience with another where that individual is willing to know for you what you can't know for yourself. You're too locked in to be able to see. And in those moments, you might be able to minister or help others, but you're not feeling that sense of help and ministering to for yourself. And so it's really a willingness to ask for that support.
That's a beautiful thought. Do you have any idea why they happen?
Why they happen?
Mm-hmm.
My teacher Arnold Patton used to say, why is not a useful question. Because I think, he said that because it tends to take us deeper into the darkness. We get into a place of mental gymnastics where we're trying to understand darkness, and darkness is not really something, in my view, that we can really understand. We're encouraged to bring that darkness into the light, but not to wander around bumping our head in the darkness, because there's a part of us that knows that the light is always there. And so I think a lot of that support was saying or hearing from someone else, there is this light, there is this love. I'm feeling it for you in this moment, they would say. The group is holding that space for you. And so that made a difference. And It was a really one of the more extended periods of that dark night of the soul was when I was going through a period of sciatica, very severe sciatica, and in my case, it cycled to be more severe as the days went by, rather than kind of finding a happy medium, if you will. And I was doing everything I knew to do. I was doing sweat lodges, I was doing cleanses, I was seeing the practitioners that I knew to help me and so forth. But I just really finally had to come to a place of surrender, and when I was able to get to that place, was guided to a beautiful individual who was a major spiritual figure in my life. She was also a massage therapist. Her husband was a chiropractor, and between the two of them and Spirit, they helped bring me back to life. But I was really at a place where I wouldn't have minded if I hadn't woken up the next day, because I was in so much pain.
But the thing is, the light always follows the darkness every single time.
Yes,
right?
yes.
We need to always remember that if we get in a place like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would encourage anyone that might be experiencing this interview at a later time to really remember that.
Mm-hmm. So this is Saturday, and Sunday will be the last service that you will give us in this current capacity that you have. And I'm wondering what your plans are for your future, for when you leave Unity Church of the Hills.
Well, to take a well-deserved rest with Mary. We're looking forward to that. It'll be to get back to Georgia and to the home that we've established there a little while back, and to begin to find our way in that setting to kind of get that home ready. We want to do some writing. We want to write about our relationship.
Oh, please do.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what we typically hear when we mention that, because the story is really amazing. We've just been able to touch on it today. So we have that book that we want to write, and our motivation for writing it is because we think it might be helpful to other people, and we want that to be there for folks, you know.
I'm certain it will be.
Oh, well, good. And then we want to travel. We've actually got some travel plans sort of laid out. Mary and I love to have fun together. We love to walk on trails and see interesting places and just do fun things. And so we're looking forward to having a lot of fun. And we will, of course, might be an opportunity to say this, we will, of course, in a lot of our fun moments and light moments and centered moments, be thinking about our beautiful family here at Unity Church of the Hills.
And we will continue to think of you as well.
Thank you.
In closing, I'm wondering if there's any last words you might like to say to the viewers and many people who know you and love you dearly, and perhaps also some who haven't met you yet until now.
Yes, I think so, and a lot of this will be embodied in what Mary and I share on Sunday morning, but what has occurred to me, and it's been increasingly so as these last few months and weeks have kind of brought us to this point, is that really what Mary and I were gifted in doing here is in holding up a mirror to the beauty and the strength and the light and the love that is this community, that are you people, UK and our beautiful friend Scott, who's filming this experience for us today, the people that we've worked with on the staff over these last 10 years, the people that we serve in this ministry. And so that is what I would want people to know more than anything else, that it has been an honor and a privilege and a gift for us. But Mary and Steve Bolen don't possess anything that anyone else doesn't possess. It lives in all of us. And so it's been a great gift to do that. And our hope is that people will remember that and know that we came and reminded them of something that was already there. And to grow in that, to hold that energy for each other, to hold it for our new ministers, a beautiful, beautiful couple that I'm so excited about coming here to this ministry, and Mary feels the same way. And so it would be to kind of expand the idea, so that, as I mentioned in a recent talk, we come back and we don't know the place because it's so much expanded in that way. We feel the love, of course, but it is something that is rampant throughout this community. And we know that that is there, it exists, but to see it grow and to know that that love is going out into other families, to other friends, to other circles, makes us feel very good to know that that's not only possible, but that's happening.
Beautiful, beautiful words, Steve. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kay. I'm so grateful for the opportunity. And I love you, and I love you.
And them.
And all of you back there at the back of the camera. So
Got it.
this was helpful. You know, God is so present in this church, in all of you. I mean, and for Mary and I, we just had to put our big girl pants on these last few weeks, and it just kind of, and we've got this couple more days, and got Jerry's service tomorrow, Jerry Ray's service, and it's just amazing. It's a great, great gift.
The spiritual journey is one of learning to embody spiritual principles so that our life and the lives of those around us can become more whole. I hope that this interview has given you some ideas that you can take away and use to make your own life journey richer and more filled with unconditional love and forgiveness. Steve, I want to thank you and Mary again so much for all you brought to our community. We will always love you forever, and God bless you.
Thank you, Kay. It's been a great gift for both of us.